In this episode, we are going to be sharing and explaining how we analyze vacation rental properties. There is a lot to take a look at to ensure that your investment is the right investment. And Levi's joining me on this episode along with our realtor, Jantina. We're going to take you through the calculations that we do, what we look for in a market, the potential exit strategies, which is really important to consider, and then finally the ROI, so that when you go into the property or the area, you know that you're going to be fine with the values and you're actually going to make money on that vacation rental. In this segment, we're going to go over how to analyze a property for vacation rentals. I've got a great team sitting here. I've got my son Levi, who's joined us. He is our chief analyzer for the team.
Chief.
Yes. And our realtor, Jantina. Jantina, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And we've just looked at some properties and we're going to be sharing some things about those. But I want to take a moment and just express to you how important it is to have a good real estate agent on your team. One of the things we always look for is someone that's got some experience in the market and does investment properties themselves. And Jantina, you totally fit the bill for that.
I have a couple.
You do, yeah. We're kind of like, trying to get ahead of each other, a little competition for investor properties. But we're going to be just starting out here with some discussion on a property that we looked at that fit our price range. It's in a neighborhood we like, and I'm going to start with Levi to give us his initial thoughts on Samar Road.
Yeah. So the first thing I like to consider when we look at a potential fixer-upper to specifically turn into a vacation rental is it within the city limits? Because that's going to dictate how much money per night we need in margin. Whether or not we have to give 10% tourism tax on all the revenue that we get or not. This one is in the city limits. It's in a neighborhood that does not have an HOA and is Airbnb or short-term rental friendly. So, in the city limits, that's not ideal because we lose 10% of our revenue, but we can get a license for it, so that makes it viable.
Yes.
The house itself, however, even though the after repair value of the house and what we could purchase the property for has a good margin to include our construction costs, the finished product I don't think would be too great because there's a low ceiling in the house. That's not something that we can overcome.
Without a lot of money.
Right.
Without a lot of money.
Yeah.
The house is like elevated 3 or 4 feet in the middle for some reason. There looked to me like there might have been an unpermitted addition, which could cause a lot of issues for us when we do get into the actual renovation, even though we only want to do cosmetic stuff. Mm-hmm. It has the original cast iron pipes, which would be expensive to fix. And if there was ever an issue with the plumbing in a long-term rental, that's not that big of a deal. You can make those repairs with a tenant in it, even though it's not ideal. Short-term rental, that can absolutely tank your reviews. And if that happens early, you might not be able to come back ever from an issue like that. So those are a few issues. And then I guess the main reason that I'm not too fond of this property for us for a vacation rental is because of the fact that there's let's say a 1-star hotel or less, maybe a 0.5 star directly in the backyard. So long-term rental, not a big deal if there's some annoyances. The tenants can overcome it or we could, try to do something with greenery or something like that to kind of block that out. But because those reviews are so critical with the short-term rental and your success is dependent on getting 5-star reviews consistently, one like noisy evening with bad guests in that
Yes.
hotel could absolutely tank our investment. And I think it's too high risk for all the money that we would put into this property.
That's really good. And actually, in that discussion, Jantina, I saw a lot of tips for us to share. One of those is pay attention to how the city culture is towards vacation rentals. And Jantina, maybe you can comment a little bit on that.
Well, my thoughts on Samar, I'm a little nervous about the multi-level, the different levels of the flooring. I think that could potentially be a liability issue as a rental. The last thing you need is somebody tripping and suing you, and they're, that just messes everything up.
That's like tip number 2 already that we have pulled out of this conversation, is to pay attention to those liability issues. And you're right. I mean, I've been in houses where you don't see the step.
Correct.
Right?
And all of a sudden you're down.
Yeah, that's really
People
good.
falling face first, not good for the reviews.
No. Hard to bury those reviews.
What did you think about the price?
I thought it was a little overpriced. I mean, I feel even in this market, it's important to come in with an offer that you're comfortable at, that the numbers are going to work for you. You're buying this as an investment. You're not living there.
Right.
I mean, maybe you would someday, but you're buying it as an investment. You need to make the money when you're buying the house.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I tend to really like the look and feel of a property. And so I'm always having to be reeled back, and Levi is the best at reeling me back. So maybe, Levi, you can share a little bit about how you analyze properties.
Oh, absolutely. So the 2 main metrics that I'm looking at, or the 3, are how much can I get into the property for? And then that's my cost basis. And what's the after repair value? And then how much would I have to spend in construction and closing costs to get the asset to after repair form? And actually with Samar, there is a margin there to be able to pull that off. We would have equity in the property if we bought it for asking price, fix it up to the standard that we like to fix things up to,
Yes.
and then what it would be worth at that point would be more than our all-in cost. So that aspect is there. However, there's an opportunity cost with having not only the funds to buy the house, but also be paying the construction costs to work on the house and get it to that after repair form, which I think that money could be better allocated in other properties.
Yeah. And we learned one of the things that was disclosed, and this is where, Jantina, you're super helpful. This girl, she can dig out any information because she's been in the market. But remember with what we found out with the plumbing?
Yes. So a lot of these old homes are from the 50s and 60s, and the pipes were cast iron. They're now at the end of their life. So a lot of them are corroding. We have a lot of salt in our soil. And you can have some huge issues, especially after you've spent a lot of money redoing floors, making everything beautiful, and then all of a sudden you have to rip that all up and redo the pipes. So you can have them scoped, which they run a camera down through the lines, and you can make a decision whether you want to move forward or you try to renegotiate, at that point. Right. After the inspection period, and potentially, get a credit at closing to have those pipes repaired. So there's a lot. I mean, there's a lot of things behind the walls that people don't look at.
This particular house, they actually had a quote ready to go from a plumbing company of about $25,000 to replace
They
those
did,
cast
and that's where Jantina got that information. And this is a good tip for you, because when you see a property that was on the market and it went under contract and it falls out of contract, which is what happened here, that's where your real estate agent with the connections and relationships starts asking questions. And because we were noticing that, and Jantina asked the question, we were able to actually get the information on the plumbing issue. Let's go back and talk a little bit more about the hotel that was behind it.
To me, right away, that's like, no, we're not buying this property. That is, if I was on vacation, I would not want to sit in the backyard having a cocktail after being at the beach all day and listening to the activities at the 0.5-star hotel, the motel.
And that's generous. 0.5. It's more of a 0.25.
Yeah. So, my opinion is let's move on.
Yeah, and I think it wasn't Dave with you on that in the backyard. Or was it just you two that initially looked at it? And you went in the backyard and you're like, oh my goodness, there's hotel guests looking right at us.
Yeah, we were kind of like, it was really in our face.
Right. They were thinking, this place sucks. Maybe that place is vacant. We can sneak over there and spend the night.
Not a good backyard view.
No. So that's tip number 4 is really pay attention to what's going on around you and think beyond the actual property. Mm-hmm. Think about the environment, the noise, and that it's a place that people will feel safe and secure. And there is a give and take.
Mm-hmm. And that property checked a lot of the boxes.
It did.
That we have. I mean, if it hadn't been for that, it might have been considered.
Yeah. And then there was the most awkward floor plan in this. And we know, too, when you're competing, Levi, you actually mentioned this. When we're competing against people buying a property that they're like, it's fine, I'm going to move right in, then people tend to overpay. And that's really what we were competing against if we would have considered this any further.
Yeah. It almost has to be like a stale listing that has an issue that we can fix, or so decrepit and gross that no one would ever consider living there. But there's kind of a messy middle in between.
There is.
That you end up competing against people that, hey, it's the only house under 450 in this great school district. It's a safe neighborhood for your kids. Mm-hmm. It's really ugly, but there's no like toxic mold or anything. Yeah. So a family might move into it.
It's tricky to get a good deal in a seller's market.
It is, especially single family homes in this area. Mm-hmm. My goodness.
Having knowledge of construction and knowing how to remodel and being able to see vision in a home is huge because most people can't.
Yeah.
So that it's a really good negotiating tool.
Yeah. So I think we all agree we're passing on Samar. That is not going to be a potential property for. Yeah. We are not usually people to look at condos, which and a lot of it is the HOA fees can be really expensive. Yeah. However, there was a condo that you two looked at that you really felt had potential. So Levi, how about we start out? Can you talk about that?
Absolutely. So when we first went in there, we were unsure if we were at the right place. This is a stale listing, priced very competitively, and
I think it had just had a reduction as well.
Yeah, had a recent price reduction, but it had been on the market multiple months, and frankly, the listing is just not very. It doesn't put the property in a great light. The property's on the beach, but there's no ocean pictures. Yeah. It has a river and ocean and pool view from the balcony. Not mentioned on MLS.
Not mentioned, no photos. It was totally undermarketed, which was such an advantage for us.
Yeah.
And this is a small building without a pool. And the HOA fees are very low, a third of what I would say is average.
And this condo had just gone through a major remodel and update. So all the assessments and the costs for that had already been incurred by the other owner. So that was nice walking into not going to have to worry about a big assessment in the next little while.
So Dave and I had a little hurdle, like, what? Why are we looking at a condo? I thought we agreed we didn't want to do a condo, but yet you two were so like, you gotta see this property. Mm-hmm. And you really touched on something, Jantina, because someone doing a poor job on a listing is great when you're the buyer, right?
Oh, absolutely.
But it's not great when you're the seller. So I was so grateful that you two had kind of seen that opportunity. And then where we build wealth as a family is we go into a property, we look at what we can do to reduce some things to bring that value up. Mm-hmm. And so I would love to just talk through the analysis. Levi, you're a numbers guy. And so what about this condo actually, what were you seeing that had potential?
Yeah. So after reviewing some of the comparable sales with what the finished product would look like if we bought this property and we renovated it to our standards, I think the after repair value is about $350. And even though asking price is in the mid twos, I think we can push the low twos because it is such a stale listing. And if you factor in about $75 per square foot, which this is a smaller unit, only about 800 square feet. Yeah. Even with closing costs, we want to keep this property and use it as a short-term rental, which the HOA does allow, which is critical. But it also cash flows as a long-term rental. We could potentially do a cash-out refinance to get our construction costs back and redeploy that capital into other properties. Or we could sell the property if we decided that we wanted to sell it.
Back to the exit strategy.
Right?
Yeah. And those are our three potential exit strategies. And even with closing costs, we can make money in all three of those ways. And it's not a huge project. Renovating an 800 square foot condo is a lot quicker, and it's a lot less of a headache for me, who manages the construction, than say Samar, which is close to 2,500 square feet.
Yeah. And really a mess. That was really a mess.
Oh, no doubt.
So, Jantina, from a realtor perspective, what about this property was something that you really felt good about putting it forward to us?
So when we initially went to see it, we were unaware, of course, of the views. Yeah. We had no idea. Levi and I walked in and we were both just blown away. I was just like, look at this. I think the curtains were even closed. It was so ridiculous.
Yeah.
And
for those real estate agents out there, that is like a really critical tip. If you have an ocean view, you want to close the blinds and don't post that on MLS to get maximum sale price.
Yeah, good tip for realtors. But I think we just stood there in the living room, I think just kind of dumbfounded, and it was just like, look at that, look, you can see the ocean.
I know.
It was crazy. And the property was in decent condition. And, like you said, it was small. So your construction costs are going to be extremely low and easy, quick. You can get it back on the market with a quick turnaround and start making money on it. So it was a win. And I'm like you, I'm not a fan of condos because of the HOA fees and the assessments and the people that are in the condos that kind of, oversee everything that goes on and all of that. But this condo was a small complex, great location. You're right on the ocean, and it doesn't get better than that. It's just sweet. It was a little sweet spot, and we were so grateful to discover it. It was just like, yeah, let's do this.
Yeah, and you can all probably tell from this conversation that we did go ahead and make an offer on this property, and we did come in lower on it, and they met us kind of in the middle, right?
Yeah, we went back and forth a little bit, which is a good thing to do. You want to give a little, you want to take a little. So if everybody's feeling a little pain in the negotiation, you've done well. So
yeah. And we have learned too that there's like a law of attraction around us with real estate. And it is a thing, which means when we find something, even if it's been out in the market for a long time, and it's like if we recognize that this is a good deal, if we don't move, it's just gone. And so we actually have learned that there is something that the Lord is showing us and we need to jump on it. And I am so glad we did in this situation. Yeah. Okay, let's go a little deeper in the financial analysis, because with a vacation rental, it's actually very different than looking at something that might be a long-term rental, or we term it a buy and hold. And Levi, you are really, really good at this analysis. So just share a little bit more about how you analyze a vacation rental property.
So a vacation rental specifically, I try to be on the conservative side of projecting how much revenue that we're going to get from a given property. Number one, vacation rentals are slow to start. With a long-term rental, I'm getting the market rate for rent right off the bat. Vacation rentals, I need to build up reviews, and I can slowly edge the price up as I get more and more, hopefully positive reviews. And then my occupancy goes up and I can charge more, and I can actually get more money as time goes on. So when we underwrite a property, meaning we're analyzing this property, we're putting it under a microscope to see how much money are we going to yield from purchasing this asset. I like to be really conservative. Usually my metric is 80-20, meaning 80% of what the market rate that I'm seeing on Airbnb or VRBO, that's what I want to underwrite off of. So I don't expect to get 100% of what comparable properties that are on Airbnb are going to get. I'm going to get 20% less than that because it's brand new. And even if other properties are getting 25 days of occupancy, I like to underwrite based off of an average of 20 days per month that it's going to be rented throughout a given year. That might be low, but that's okay, because if we analyze a property based on that 80-20 rule, we might get even more money and it might perform better, but you don't want to be in the position where you're projecting 100% of market rents at 30 days a month, because you might end up very disappointed with how that house performs financially.
That's really good. And there's an important thing in there, and it is that if you are really tight on cash, vacation rentals are not the one to just jump into. Because there is a startup time. You're going to have some peaks, you're going to have some valleys, and you have to be able to weather through it, especially in that first year.
And there's also a season, especially here in Florida. We have our snowbird season, for lack of better words. It's not really that so much snowbird anymore, but people that do come down for the winter. So the winter months are your peak season, but we also have sort of an underlying market for the summer, when you have people from like Orlando or more inland areas that want to come and spend some time at the beach with their families, and the kids are out of school, so they're going to rent a place for like a month, and maybe just come over on long weekends or something, but have that option. So there is a transition between the two, and you can probably charge more during those winter months, and maybe a little less during the summer, but be open to those variables and the difference.
And that comes back to, you have to, for short-term rentals, you have to have the cash reserves to be able to sustain the slow season. So at the time of filming this, it is early September. August is a very slow month, and early September is
kids are going back to school
for vacation rentals.
And it's very hot.
Your mortgage company doesn't care what the Airbnb market is during the time of purchase.
They still want their payment every month.
You still have to pay your mortgage. You can't pay them during Christmas time or during Thanksgiving or during the 4th of July, when bookings are through the roof and you're making lots of money. They want their money every month. So you have to have enough reserves to be able to sustain the slow seasons, especially early on before you get those reviews.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because we don't want to be stressed out beyond already by doing the remodeling. And then one other point, Levi, that I think we could cover in Jantina is with financing. Levi, you mentioned a cash-on-cash return. Maybe you can explain just a little bit about what that is, and then let's talk about mortgage rates and kind of what's happening right now.
Yeah. So I'll start with cash-on-cash return. That's I think the most important metric when you're buying investment properties for long-term rentals or short-term rentals. The whole financial world operates off of yield. So where can I park my money? What investment can I park my money in that's going to give me the best return? It's really simple. And even though real estate historically has always gone up, we don't really know what the market's going to be in 5 years. So we've had appreciation on all of our properties, and we will continue to long term. But if the only reason we're buying a house is so that it can go up in value, we might find ourselves very disappointed if the market takes a downturn. However, the cash-on-cash return metric keeps us in a safe place where even if the asset itself, the house, is going down in value, we're still getting paid to own it. So we can still make those payments and we can still make money regardless of what the market is doing. And the rate of return that our down payment plus our construction costs are that's our cash in, and then the rent that we get paid is how much the return is.
Right.
So that ratio, we like to stay 10 to 20%.
We do. On an annual basis.
You know, short-term rental, we need to be in the 20 range. Long-term rental, we can be down in the 10s because it's more steady.
Yeah, more stable.
Lower risk, less work for me doing the check-ins and checkouts and all that.
And that's a better rate than the stock market's getting you right now.
That is so true.
So real estate is by far your better investment.
It is.
Plus you can touch it, see it,
Walk in
visit it.
We're a little biased, but that's what we grab. So, but if we're hitting that 10 to 20% cash on cash return, if our houses go up in value, that's just a bonus for
Right.
us.
It's like, the frosting on the
need
cake,
that.
Right. And that only matters when you're going to sell it. So, if the market's down, you're not going to sell your house.
Yeah.
You're just going to wait because you're going to be making money still, and you're going to be covering your little egg that you have to cover and making money. And then if the market goes up and you decide it's a good time to sell, then you sell then. And,
Yeah.
you've
Or
made
we-
a great
or-
investment.
Absolutely. Or do a cash out refinance where we're
Right.
basically taking out more debt against the house, only if it can
Yes.
sustain it with our cash on cash
Right.
return.
Yes, you still want to be able to cover that. You don't want
Yeah.
to end up in a
Or
negative.
to get the money back that you put
yeah.
into it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
you know,
exactly.
Yeah.
To do the improvements.
A lot of people do the cash outs and they end up in a negative deficit, and that's where a lot of people run into issues.
Cash flow issues.
Yeah.
Especially after you make those amazing improvements, your house is worth more, and the city says, hey,
Your taxes.
you owe us more taxes because
Yes.
your house is worth more now. And even though the loan amount is the same, your PITI that you're paying every month, which is your escrowed mortgage, is going to go up. And you have to have financial forecast for that.
Yes, that's really good. And just finally, briefly, I want to talk about the financing at the time that we're visiting today. There is continued increase in the Fed's interest rates. And there is kind of a bias in the market against investors, I would say, just with points and pricing. So it's just very important that when you're looking at a property that you have a good lender that is going to provide you with some options. At some points, you may do something that is outside of the normal Fannie and Freddie market or products. And just realize that there could be some points involved and factor all of that in that cash on cash. You got to be aware of what's happening. But we really feel that this area in particular is really strong, and we really appreciate you, Jantina, for helping guide us through this. And Levi, I don't know what we would do without your analysis, and anyway, we really appreciate it. And we just want to encourage you. I think vacation rentals are a great opportunity, and hopefully we've given you some tips and insight today on how to go into vacation rentals wisely.